Learning English through podcasts is the trusted choice of some of the most successful English language learners. Here's why you should think seriously about using podcasts to help improve your English speaking, listening, reading, and writing. This guide will explain why listening to podcasts is often overlooked by students. Explain why every good English learner should actually make listening to podcasts an important part of their learning routine. And explain how podcasts can be used to help improve listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You should find this guide useful both if you are living in an English-speaking country and a non-English-speaking country. Whatever your English learning ambitions, listening is almost always an underrated option for language learners. As an English learner, your primary goal is probably to communicate with people in English. Maybe that's native speakers in an English-speaking country. Maybe it's other non-native speakers in a non-English-speaking country. But if you ask almost any English learner what they want to improve most, it's not normally listening or comprehension. For most students, the answer will be I want to improve my English speaking. Here's how listening to English podcasts can help with each of these aspects of English. Evidently, the more any language you listen to, then better your listening skills become. English is no exception. By exposing yourself to more English speech by native speakers, you will become familiar with how native speakers actually use language, how sentences are constructed, how English speakers use connected speech and different tones to express different meanings of words. Further to this, you'll improve your grammar and vocabulary through acquisition. But I thought you could only learn grammar and vocabulary in class, from a textbook. Well, this isn't true. There are plenty of people who have impeccable grammar without having ever opened a textbook in their life. Speaking and pronunciation. Have you ever heard an Englishman speaking Latin? I have, and I've been one as well. And I can guarantee you that it sounds nothing like how it would have been spoken by the Romans. Imagine learning to speak just through reading and writing, without ever listening to a native speaker. That's how people learn to speak Latin. From teachers who have never heard anyone speaking it because the Romans have been dead for almost 2,000 years, and they just end up pronouncing the words as if they were speaking English. And it sounds terrible. Just ask an Italian. Go through the podcast transcript and highlight any difficult words to pronounce. Record yourself saying them and compare that to the way they're pronounced by the native speaker. The majority of English learners don't make the effort to do this. And it's very easy to see the difference between those who do and those who don't. Reading and writing. While listening to podcasts will primarily help improve your listening and speaking, they can also help improve your reading and writing. For reading, you can read the transcript before listening. What words didn't you understand? If you're using a podcast that has key vocabulary, this can be a helpful study aid.
For writing, practice transcribing the podcast and then compare that to the transcript. How did your transcription compare to the real one? Similarly to recording yourself speaking about your reflections on the podcast, you could write down a summary of the podcast, or write down your own thoughts about the subject matter. Share it with the podcast host. Read more about the subject from other sources on the internet or books. This is a guide about how podcasts can be so beneficial, but you may be wondering whether you can achieve the same results by listening to the radio, listening to an audiobook, watching films or TV with subtitles, or watching YouTube. Well, we should start by saying that you can listen to podcasts, to the radio, or to an audiobook. The benefits we've listed above are common to all three, but podcasts are easier for reasons that we'll describe in the next section.
The important thing to get the most out of any listening resource is that you're 100% concentrating, and there's no video or other stimuli to help you understand. If you can understand podcasts and audio without visual stimuli, then you will find understanding conversation so much easier, because you have taught yourself to not rely on external stimuli to understand. The advantage of listening to podcasts aimed at native speakers is, well, they're aimed at native speakers, so the speed and vocabulary used by the hosts is likely to be similar to what you might hear in a normal English-speaking environment.
The disadvantage of anyone listening to podcasts aimed at native speakers is that, for anyone below C1, it's likely to be quite tough to use native speaker podcasts efficiently, as you will either not understand enough to make it enjoyable to listen to, or you'll have to stop and pause too frequently to make it an enjoyable experience. As a general guide, you should aim to find a podcast where you can understand around 80% of the speech. If you understand much more than 80%, then you probably aren't being exposed to enough new words and phrases, and if it's much less than 80%, then it might not be so enjoyable to listen to. In addition, podcasts aimed at native speakers often don't come with transcripts or key vocabulary, so following along can be tricky. The first category is of podcasts that teach you things like pieces of vocabulary, weird expressions, and educate you about the English language itself. This is great for people who are relatively early in their English journey, so maybe below level B2. If you are the kind of person who loves learning new vocabulary and grammar, then this could be a good option for you. In general, these podcasts will teach you new pieces of grammar or vocabulary, but not within context. This means that more advanced learners may find them slightly manufactured or unrealistic. If you are above a certain level, then you will be better off learning vocabulary and grammar through contextual learning, not through specific vocabulary and grammar podcasts. They can be a really good alternative to learning from a grammar or vocabulary book though, as the host will almost always be speaking in normal English, so it won't be as manufactured and robotic as if you were just learning from a textbook.